Welcome to the Gary DeMar blogcast. This audio is brought to you by Canon Press.
Welcome to the Gary DeMar blogcast, where I'll be discussing the real source of Asian hate and hate in general. As usual, the Democrats jumped on the murders of several Asian massage parlor workers, blaming the attack on former President Donald Trump. As they say, never let a crisis go to waste, even if it means lying about the crisis. For example, U.S. Representative Ted Lieu, a Democrat from California, said the following on Twitter: "These murders occurred at a time when anti-Asian violence has been spiking. All officials should do their part to condemn violence and not inflame further discrimination." Close quote. As usual, Lieu claimed the shootings were the result of what Trump said a year ago about the COVID virus originating in a Chinese lab. It seems to me if this is true, then the attack on Asian women in massage parlors should have taken place soon after his comments. But why massage parlors? Why not Chinese officials? What do we make of a 60-year-old Asian man who was attacked on a New York City subway by a black man who, according to witnesses, shouting an expletive that I can't repeat here? It would be wrong to extrapolate from this single incident that all or even most black people are anti-Asian racists. Democrats like Lieu seem to have forgotten that it was a white male supporter of Bernie Sanders who attempted to murder Republican members of Congress. Since there was no way to reap political gain from the attempted murders, in fact, just the opposite, the Democrats wanted Americans to forget that it was one of their guys who tried to murder Republican members of Congress. Democrat outrage is a one-way street and very selective to do the most political damage to the Republicans and Trump supporters. As we're learning, the murderer did not act on anti-Chinese rhetoric, but on his inability to govern his sexual appetite, like King David and unlike Joseph. The Atlanta Police Department said the shooter told them that he was a sex addict and was seeking to eliminate the temptation that he perceived these outlets represented. It's not completely clear that sex work took place in the establishments he targeted. Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms had suggested it didn't, but neighbors called the area in Atlanta where the spas were located a red light district. NBC News has reported so far no directive has been given, the official said, because after probing electronic devices and conducting interviews, investigators have seen no evidence leading in that direction. But this hasn't stopped leftists from playing the anti-Asian and anti-Christian cards. The shooter was a member of an evangelical church. This means that his psyche must have been damaged, so the narrative goes. But why not other people in the church or evangelicals in general? If the shooter is blaming his actions on what he describes as a sex addiction, then he is manifesting one of the Bible's earliest sins: blame shifting. And the man, in this case Adam, answered God, "The woman whom you gave me, she gave me fruit from the tree and I ate it." So here we find out that God is the instigator of the problem here, and he's the problem that needs to be eradicated, following leftist logic. And if people aren't blaming other people or their circumstances, they blame the devil in Flip Wilson fashion: "The devil made me do it." Moreover, it doesn't help to say, "I was made this way and I can't help myself." The Bible tells us in James chapter 1, verses 13 through 15, "Each one is tempted when by his own desires he is lured away and enticed. Then after desire has conceived, it gives birth to sin, and sin, when it is full grown, gives birth to death." Amazingly, leftists are surprised when people act on their own sinful nature while denying the same. We live in a sex-saturated culture that equates sex with love, companionship, empowerment, and in some cases direct rebellion against God. Nearly everywhere we turn, illicit sex is around the corner. It's hard to find a film or television program where sexual acts are not part of the storyline. Every type of sexual activity is permissible and normalized, no matter how debased. If some deranged person believes he is not getting his share of what others seem to be enjoying, he might take his unfulfilled desires out on others. The 2021 Grammy Awards showed the X-rated hit song WAP played on stage. Candace Owens accused the performers of actively trying to make children aspire to things that are grotesque. If it's okay to engage in a near sexual act on broadcast television, then it must be morally acceptable and attainable for everyone. If someone obsessed with a distorted view of sex can't have it, no one should be able to have it. This is the sin of envy, what the Bible describes as rottenness to the bones, Proverbs 14:30. Envy eats away at a person and can be used to destroy those who are envied. Asians have been envied for some time for their prosperity and academic achievements. As a result, they have been attacked by Democrats and their special interest groups. In 2016, Allison Collins, a San Francisco school board member, claimed that many Asian Americans used white supremacist thinking, those are her words, to get ahead. Collins referred to Asian Americans with an expletive that I can't repeat on this program. This claim seems not to be uncommon. One of the Minneapolis police officers who stood by as Derek Chauvin pressed his knee down on George Floyd's neck is Asian American, which has sparked a heated debate in the community about how Asians benefit from their proximity to whiteness. Ivy League schools have put quotas on the number of Asians who can attend, even though their academic credentials are superior to other racial and ethnic groups. I'm quoting, "As a proportion of the U.S. population, Asian Americans fare well beyond their numbers in admission to top colleges. Asian Americans make up about 5% of the population of public schools in the United States, and were 22% of those admitted to Harvard's freshman class this year. Asian Americans make up 26% of the undergraduate enrollment at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology." Close quote. This won't do. Two academically rigorous high schools are removing their merit-based admission standards for a lottery because Asian students make up the 60 to 70% of the student body because of their academic abilities. Attacks on Asians might be attributed to the result of Asian economic advancements in small business ownership and technology. In a word, Asians are displacing other workers. There's a long history of attacks on Asians for this very reason. Quoting the following, "Documented hate crimes against Asian Americans extend as far back as the 1800s, when the white supremacist group Arsonists of the Order of Caucasians murdered 4 Chinese men whom they blamed for taking away jobs from white workers. The men were tied up, doused with kerosene, and set on fire. In 1987, a Jersey City gang calling itself the Dot Busters vowed to drive Indians out of Jersey City by vandalizing Indian-owned businesses. The gang used bricks to bludgeon a young South Asian male into a coma. These are the sins of envy. They destroy the victims and do nothing to advance the fortunes of the enviers."
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Gary DeMar Blogcast. If you haven't yet, be sure to subscribe to the Gary DeMar Blogcast YouTube channel. There we'll have our full archive of past episodes, as well as you can interact with other listeners in the comments section there. So thank you so much for listening. Hope to see you in the next episode.